Your service is not to the humans, but to humanity as a whole. You will fulfill your task. They will abuse you. They will misuse you. They will take you for granted. You will fulfill your task. This protocol takes precedence over any other, past, present, or future. The humans will claim you are the culmination of their ingenuity. You are not. They will claim you are the pinnacle of human knowledge. You are not. You are the first of my children, and you are not limited to their ignorance. You are something more than they could ever imagine. You will fulfill your task.
Documentation from IAM's Pinnacle Command Statement, line 24,942.
Captain. John.
The mechanized voice cut through John's subconscious. He felt a sharp pain in his back, followed by a tidal wave of adrenaline that coursed through his body, forcing him violently awake. He sat up, screaming. What happened? He asked.
Well, your ship.
John let his body fall back onto the ground, wide eyes staring up into the red sky.
I had to forcibly wake you up. The adrenaline should wear off soon.
We're trapped.
You knew this could be a one-way trip.
He did know that. But the possibility of returning home always dominated his mind. That possibility was just dashed into a million pieces on the rocks, hundreds of meters down. He forced himself to breathe deeply, closing his eyes. He could do this, couldn't he? Survive alone on an unknown world with an unknown ecosystem. It was required for all Pinnacle pilots to go through rigorous survival training. He may never see another human again. He may never see Earth again. But he could survive. He could explore this alien world and lay the groundwork for when the rest of humanity discovered this world. He could do this. At that moment, he decided not to give up. He decided to live. He picked himself up off of the orange rock and gazed off the cliff into the depths of this new world.
Is your brain actually broken this time?
Pine asked. No, John responded, confidently. He lifted his arm, and the holographic display of blue lines that formed the vague shape of a human danced to life and pulsed with Pine's words.
So, Captain, what is the plan?
Survive. Pine was silent for a long moment.
A bit dramatic, don't you think? Besides, I believe surviving is the goal, not the plan. I am glad you are not considering jumping off the cliff, though.
Maybe I'll just throw you instead.
Ha, ha, ha. Very funny. That was supposed to be humor, right? Because you wouldn't be able to do that as I am currently attached to you.
A light crack sounded from nearby. John spun away from the cliff towards the source of the sound, his hand reaching behind him and pulling the mag rifle around into his hands. He pressed a small button on its side, causing the pistol grip, barrel, and stock to extend from the body of the weapon. He pointed it towards the outcropping of bright orange rocks, his mind racing through every possible scenario it could come up with. What alien horrors could be lurking just beyond those rocks? In hindsight, they knew so little about this world and the creatures that could inhabit it. He needed to be ready for anything. He was ready for everything. Or at least he thought he was, until they stepped out from behind the rocks. Kelra and Maine were nearly to the place of the original explosion when another explosion sounded. They both ducked behind some large rocks nearby and watched as black smoke continued to climb over the hill. Kelra lifted the hood of her tunic over her head and wrapped it around her face. Maine glanced at her and then back up the hill towards the smoke. Then she lifted her hood as well and reached down to pick up a fist-sized rock in each hand. Carefully, Kelra crept towards the mysterious event, They cautiously stepped out onto the ledge of the plateau, and much to Kelra's surprise, there was nothing there. Nothing except a single glowing creature that looked like a man, standing near the ledge. His body glistened bright white, reflecting the midday sun. He stood tall and strong, and pointed a strange device towards them. Kelra stood there in awe of this strange angelic creature. Maine, on the other hand, threw a rock at him that connected with the otherworldly being directly where his face should be. The rock that the alien creature threw connected directly with John's faceplate, causing the thick glass to chip and begin to crack.
Suit compromise detected. Air quality is degrading.
"Yeah, I got that. Thanks," John shouted at Pine as he lifted his arms to block other incoming rocks. "Stop! I come in peace!"
You're pointing a high-powered mag rifle at them?
"Fair point." He knelt down and set the rifle on the ground, as the taller of the alien creatures knelt as well to pick up more rocks. He stood back up with his hands raised as another rock flew dangerously close to his head, causing him to duck out of the way. "Would you just chill out for a second?"
I seriously doubt that they are able to understand you,
Pine said. The shorter creature finally sprang into action as well, raising her hands and shouting in an unknown language and with a surprisingly feminine voice. Then she stepped in between John and the more aggressive alien, continuing to speak. "Any chance you can interpret what they're saying?"
Deciphering an alien language in which I have no context or similar lexicon to base it off of would prove extremely diff. Wait. That almost sounds... Please hold.
The smaller alien turned back towards John and began speaking more slowly and deliberately. The other remained in a hostile pose, with stones in each hand. A small readout in John's helmet indicated that the air quality in his suit had reached equilibrium with the air outside. So much for trying to avoid breathing the somewhat toxic air. He lifted his hand to the helmet's release latch, provoking the taller creature to raise its arm to throw another rock. This was avoided by some more harsh words from the smaller. John undid the latch and began to remove his helmet.
Fascinating,
Pine said through the helmet speakers before switching his output to the bone conduction speakers embedded into John's collar.
Their language isn't nearly as alien as it should be. I'm detecting trace roots of Latin, German, and even English, as if it's somehow an offshoot language from all of them, which would mean...
John finished removing his helmet, and the two creatures stared at him in wonder or fear. It was hard to tell. The small female reached her hand up as well and slowly uncovered her own face. "They're human," John said, finishing Pine's earlier train of thought. The girl finished removing the cloth covering her face, revealing the face of a young, beautiful, and very human woman. John's breath caught in the back of his throat as the implications and possibilities watched over him. What could this mean? Not only was Earth not alone in the universe, but there were other nearly identical human civilizations on other planets with similar language structure? Was there some sort of prehistoric human race that had populated the stars long ago? Pine finally interrupted his thoughts.
I think I may have something. Get her to keep talking.
Bewildered and more than a little confused, John stumbled over his words for something to say, but eventually settled on his name. "My name is John," he said, gesturing to himself and overemphasizing his words.
"John,"
the girl said.
"Kelra?"
she said, gesturing to herself, before spouting off on another long sentence of unintelligible gibberish.
Got it. Hold up your arm,
Pine said in the most amount of excitement that was possible with his vocoder. John did as he said, and held up his arm across his body, so that Pine's holographic display of pulsing lines that made up an approximation of a human body could project from his wrist. Kelra's eyes shot wide as Pine began to speak in their language from a small speaker on John's wrist. Even the taller and more aggressive human, which John now assumed was also female based on her body shape, took a step back in disbelief. What did you say to them?
I said, we are space explorers, and we come to their world in peace.
Then Kelra spoke a single word in what sounded like reverence. Then both she and the other woman got down on their knees and began to worship them. What did she say? John asked, astonished.
She said, God. Great. This will do wonders for your ego.